After working with thousands of people over the years, I've noticed something that shows up again and again. Most individuals stand at the exact same crossroads multiple times in their lives, and each time, they make the exact same choice. They choose comfort. They choose familiar. They choose what everyone else is choosing. And then they wonder why their results look exactly like everyone else's results. There's something I need you to understand right now, something that might sting a little, but it's the truth you need to hear. Success isn't mysterious. It isn't reserved for people with special talents or unique opportunities. It isn't hiding behind some secret door that only a select few can find. Success is actually remarkably simple. But here's the part that stops most people dead in their tracks. Simple doesn't mean easy. Let me tell you about Robert Hastings. Robert worked in a warehouse in Cleveland, Ohio. He was making minimum wage, moving boxes from one place to another, scanning barcodes, loading trucks. Nothing glamorous, nothing special. Just hard, physical labor that left him exhausted every single day. Most of his coworkers would punch out at 5 o'clock, head to the bar down the street, complain about their boss, complain about their pay, complain about how unfair life was treating them. Robert punched out at 5 o'clock too, but he didn't go to the bar. While his coworkers were drowning their frustrations in cheap beer and cheaper conversation, Robert went back inside that warehouse. He stayed there until 9, sometimes 10 at night. He wasn't getting paid for those extra hours. His supervisor didn't ask him to stay. His wife certainly didn't understand why he was doing it. But Robert had noticed something that everyone else had missed. He noticed that the warehouse was bleeding money through inefficient inventory systems. Products were getting lost, shipments were delayed, clients were frustrated, the system was broken, and nobody seemed to care enough to fix it. So, Robert started studying it. He mapped out every single process. He taught himself logistics management through library books. He created spreadsheets on an old computer in the break room. He documented every bottleneck, every redundancy, every wasted motion. For 3 years, Robert did this. 3 years of staying late while others went home. 3 years of being called crazy by people who thought they knew better. 3 years of his wife asking him when this obsession would end. 3 years of having less social time, less leisure, less of everything that makes life comfortable. But Robert wasn't interested in comfortable. He was interested in different. One Tuesday afternoon, the regional director visited the warehouse. There had been complaints from major clients, threats to pull contracts, serious problems that were costing the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. The warehouse manager was in panic mode, trying to explain why things were falling apart. And that's when Robert walked into that meeting, uninvited, carrying a 3-inch binder filled with his analysis and solutions. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't wait for the perfect moment. He simply presented 3 years of work in 45 minutes. He showed them exactly where the system was failing, why it was failing, and precisely how to fix it. The regional director sat there, stunned. Here was a minimum wage warehouse worker who understood their operation better than people making 6 figures. Here was someone who had invested thousands of hours of his own time, with no guarantee of recognition or reward, simply because he saw a problem and decided to solve it. Robert became the operations director 6 months later. His salary increased by 400%, but more importantly, his entire life trajectory changed because he was willing to do what nobody else would do. He was willing to be uncomfortable. He was willing to be misunderstood. He was willing to invest in himself when there was no immediate return visible on the horizon. Now, here's what I want you to absorb from Robert's story. He didn't have special advantages. He didn't have a college degree. He didn't have connections or wealthy parents or lucky breaks. What he had was a willingness to pay a price that others weren't willing to pay. And that's the entire game. That's the whole secret to success, if you want to call it a secret. Do what others won't do. Go where others won't go. Sacrifice what others won't sacrifice. Most people hear this and they nod their heads. They agree intellectually. They think, yes, that makes sense. I should work harder. I should stay later. I should do more. But then tomorrow morning comes and they hit the snooze button. They show up late. They do the minimum required. They leave exactly on time. They spend their evenings scrolling through social media instead of building something meaningful. And then they have the audacity to call someone like Robert lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. Robert made a decision that most people will never make. He decided that his future was worth more than his comfort. He decided that temporary sacrifice was acceptable if it led to permanent improvement. He decided that being misunderstood by average people was a small price to pay for extraordinary results. The uncomfortable truth is this: you already know what you need to do. You know you should wake up earlier. You know you should learn that new skill. You know you should have those difficult conversations. You know you should start that project you've been thinking about for years. You know you should stop making excuses and start making progress. The knowledge isn't missing. The willingness is missing. Success is waiting on the other side of discomfort. It's waiting on the other side of discipline. It's waiting on the other side of doing things that feel awkward, scary, or just plain hard. And the reason most people never reach it isn't because they can't. It's because they won't. They won't push through the discomfort. They won't endure the judgment of small-minded people. They won't invest the time when nobody's watching and nobody's applauding. Every single day, you're making choices. And those choices are either taking you closer to the life you want or keeping you exactly where you are. There's no neutral ground. You're either growing or you're dying. You're either investing or you're wasting. You're either building or you're decaying. And the choice is always, always yours. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't filled with talent. It isn't filled with education. It isn't filled with opportunity. That gap is filled with one thing and one thing only: daily discipline. The actions you take when nobody's watching, when nobody's checking, when nobody would even know if you skipped today. Those actions determine everything. Angela Moretti understood this better than most. She got her real estate license at 32 years old, full of hope and ambition. She joined a brokerage in Phoenix, Arizona, walked into that office on her first day expecting to change her life. What she found instead was brutal reality. Real estate isn't like the television shows. It isn't glamorous open houses and million-dollar commissions. For most people, it's rejection. It's doors slammed in your face. It's phone calls that go to voicemail. It's months without a single sale, while your savings account drains to zero. Angela's first year was a disaster. She sold 2 houses, 2. Her total commission for 12 months of work was $11,000. She could have made more managing a retail store. Her husband started asking questions. Her parents started suggesting she go back to her old job. Her friends stopped asking how the business was going because the answer was always the same: not well. Most people would have quit. Actually, most people did quit. Angela watched 18 people join her brokerage that first year. By the end of year 2, only 3 remained. The rest went back to corporate jobs, back to safety, back to predictable paychecks and comfortable mediocrity. But Angela made a different choice. She decided that if she was going to fail, she would fail doing everything possible, not everything convenient. So she created a rule for herself. Every single morning before 9 a.m., she would make 50 cold calls, not 49, not around 50, exactly 50. No excuses, no exceptions, no days off. Her colleagues thought she was insane. Cold calling was dead, they said. Nobody responds to cold calls anymore. It's a waste of time. Focus on social media, they told her. Focus on networking events. Focus on anything except that soul-crushing rejection that comes from calling strangers who don't want to hear from you. Angela ignored them. Every morning at 6:30, she sat down at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a list of numbers. She called expired listings. She called for sale by owner properties. She called people who had recently purchased homes in other cities. She got hung up on. She got cursed at. She got told to never call again. But she also got conversations. She got appointments. She got listings. The first 6 months of this routine were torture. She was averaging 1 appointment for every 200 calls. 1 listing for every 1,000 calls. The math was depressing. The emotional toll was even worse. There were mornings she sat at that table with tears running down her face, dialing numbers anyway. There were days she wanted to throw her phone across the room and walk away from the whole nightmare. But she didn't. She kept dialing. 50 calls, every morning, before 9 a.m., while her competitors were sleeping in, checking Instagram, or sitting in coffee shops talking about what they were going to do. Angela was doing it. Month 7, something shifted. Her conversion rate improved. She was getting 1 appointment for every 100 calls, then every 75, then every 50. Her skill was improving. Her script was getting better. Her confidence was building. She was learning which objections to expect and exactly how to handle them. She was becoming a professional while everyone else was still playing amateur. 18 months into this routine, Angela closed 23 transactions in a single month. 23. Her commission check was more than she used to make in an entire year at her previous career. But here's what matters more than the money: she wasn't surprised. She had made over 13,000 cold calls at that point. She had generated over 200 appointments. She had built a pipeline so full that clients were waiting weeks just to meet with her. The same colleagues who mocked her cold calling strategy started asking for advice. They wanted to know her secret. They wanted the shortcut. They wanted the easy way to duplicate her results without doing what she did. And when she told them the truth, 50 calls every morning for 18 months straight, their faces fell. That wasn't the answer they wanted. They wanted a magic bullet. They wanted a hack. They wanted success without the suffering. But there is no hack. There's only discipline. There's only showing up every single day and doing the work that needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Angela didn't make 50 calls on the morning she felt motivated. She made 50 calls every morning, including the morning she felt defeated, depressed, and ready to quit. This is what separates people who succeed from people who struggle. It isn't capability. It isn't intelligence. It isn't even opportunity. It's the willingness to maintain discipline when discipline is difficult. Anyone can work hard when they're excited. Anyone can push themselves when they're seeing immediate results. The real test comes when results are invisible, when progress feels non-existent, when every part of you wants to stop. Mathematics doesn't care about your feelings. If you make 50 calls every morning, you'll make 18,000 calls per year. If your conversion rate is even 1%, that's 180 appointments. If you close 10% of those appointments, that's 18 transactions. And if your average commission is $8,000, that's $144,000 in income. The math works. It always works. But most people never test the equation because they quit somewhere around call number 300. They quit when it's hard. They quit when they're not seeing results fast enough. They quit when their friends make fun of them. They quit when they have a bad week. They quit when something easier presents itself. And then they spend the rest of their lives wondering why success seems to find other people but never finds them. Success found Angela because Angela stayed in one place long enough to be found. She didn't chase shiny objects. She didn't switch strategies every time something got difficult. She picked a discipline, committed to it completely, and executed it relentlessly until it produced results. That's the formula. That's the only formula that actually works. Right now, wherever you are in life, whatever you're trying to achieve, there's a discipline you're avoiding. There's something you know you should be doing consistently, but you're not doing it. Maybe it's waking up an hour earlier. Maybe it's exercising every day. Maybe it's studying your industry every night. Maybe it's reaching out to potential clients or customers. Maybe it's working on your craft when everyone else is watching television. Whatever that discipline is, it's the exact thing standing between you and the breakthrough you're waiting for. And the tragedy is that you already know what it is. You don't need another seminar. You don't need another book. You don't need another motivational video. You need to stop learning and start doing. You need to stop preparing and start performing. Angela didn't become successful because she knew more than her competitors. She became successful because she did more than her competitors. She outworked them. She outdisciplined them. She was willing to be uncomfortable longer than they were willing to be uncomfortable. And eventually, her consistency compounded into results that looked like overnight success to people who hadn't watched her suffer through 18 months of rejection. That's how it always works. People see the harvest. They never see the planting. They see the victory. They never see the training. They see the highlight reel and think success just happened, when in reality, it was built one disciplined day at a time, one uncomfortable action at a time, one moment of choosing difficulty over ease at a time. The discipline you need isn't complicated. It's probably simple, repetitive, and boring. But it works. And if you'll commit to it, if you'll execute it daily, regardless of how you feel, regardless of whether you're seeing immediate results, regardless of what anyone else thinks, it will transform your life exactly the way it transformed Angela's life. The question isn't whether discipline works. The question is whether you'll do it long enough to find out. Standing apart from the crowd isn't just uncomfortable, it's terrifying. Every human being on this planet has a deep, primal need for acceptance. We want to belong. We want to fit in. We want people to understand us, support us, and validate our choices. This need is wired into our DNA. For thousands of years, being cast out from the tribe meant death. So we've evolved to seek approval, to conform, to stay safe within the boundaries of what's acceptable to the people around us. But here's the brutal reality. Success requires you to violate that instinct. It requires you to step away from the tribe. It requires you to make choices that the people closest to you won't understand, won't support, and often won't forgive. And if you're not prepared for that isolation, if you're not willing to endure that loneliness, you'll abandon your dreams the moment the criticism begins. Kenneth Oay was 42 years old when he made the decision that would either destroy his life or transform it. He had worked for the same corporation for 16 years. He had a corner office. He had a 6-figure salary. He had health insurance, a retirement plan, 4 weeks of vacation. He had everything that society tells you means you've made it. And he was absolutely miserable. For years, Kenneth had watched his company make preventable mistakes. He saw inefficiencies that cost millions. He saw leadership making decisions based on politics rather than data. He had solutions. He had insights gained from 16 years of watching the same patterns repeat themselves. But nobody wanted to hear them. Corporate bureaucracy doesn't reward innovation. It rewards compliance. So, Kenneth started imagining a different path. He could start his own consulting firm. He could help companies solve the exact problems his employer refused to address. He had the expertise. He had the relationships. He had the vision. The only thing he didn't have was the courage to walk away from security. His wife thought he was having a midlife crisis. His father told him he was being irresponsible. His colleagues said he was throwing away a guaranteed pension for a fantasy. His brother, who worked in finance, ran the numbers and showed Kenneth exactly how risky this venture was. 90% of consulting firms fail within 5 years. Kenneth had a mortgage. He had 2 children in high school. He had responsibilities. But Kenneth also had something else, a certainty that if he stayed where he was, he would die with his potential locked inside him. He would spend the next 20 years collecting a paycheck while his soul withered. He would be safe, comfortable, and completely unfulfilled. So, he did the thing that everyone told him not to do. He resigned. The first year was hell. Kenneth had assumed his corporate relationships would translate into clients. They didn't. People who had praised his work for 16 years suddenly stopped returning his calls. His former colleagues treated him like a traitor. His network evaporated the moment he wasn't part of the club anymore. He burned through his savings in 8 months. He had to take out a loan against his house. His wife stopped talking to him about money because every conversation ended in an argument. His kids had to explain to their friends why they couldn't go on the same vacations anymore. Kenneth's father stopped calling because he couldn't handle hearing about another failed pitch, another prospect who chose a bigger firm, another month of minimal revenue. Most men in Kenneth's position would have gone back. They would have swallowed their pride, updated their resume, and found another corporate job. It wouldn't have been the same level, of course. Once you leave, you lose altitude. But it would have been stable. It would have been acceptable. It would have ended the judgment and the worry and the constant stress of not knowing if you can pay next month's bills. Kenneth didn't go back. He couldn't. Because something had happened during those months of struggle. He had discovered capabilities he didn't know he possessed. He had learned how to sell, really sell, not just rely on a corporate brand to open doors. He had learned how to deliver value so profound that clients couldn't ignore it. He had learned how to operate without a safety net, without a steady paycheck, without someone else defining his worth. 2 years in, something clicked. A client Kenneth had worked with gave him a referral. That referral turned into a contract. That contract turned into a case study. That case study turned into 3 more clients. And suddenly, momentum shifted. The same discipline that had produced nothing for 24 months started producing everything. Kenneth's firm hit 7 figures in revenue by year 3. By year 5, he had 12 employees and clients across 4 countries. But here's what matters more than the business success. Kenneth had proven something to himself. He had proven that he could stand alone. He could endure criticism from people he loved. He could survive financial pressure that would have broken most men. He could keep moving forward when every logical voice in his life was telling him to stop. The people who doubted him didn't become believers because he succeeded. They just got quiet. His father still thinks he got lucky. His former colleagues still don't understand why he left. His wife supports him now, but she'll never forget those 2 years of fear and frustration. That's the part nobody tells you about success. The people who doubted you don't apologize. They just move on. And you have to be okay with that. Because the truth is, your circle wants you to stay where you are. Not because they're bad people, not because they don't love you, but because your growth threatens their comfort. If you change, it highlights the fact that they're staying the same. If you take risks, it exposes their fear. If you succeed, it reveals what's possible, and that possibility becomes an accusation against their own inaction. So they'll discourage you. They'll disguise their fear as concern. They'll tell you they're just being realistic, just trying to protect you, just making sure you've thought this through. And maybe they believe that. Maybe they genuinely think they're helping. But the effect is the same. They're trying to keep you small so they can stay comfortable. Breaking away from that requires more than courage. It requires a willingness to be misunderstood. It requires accepting that the people closest to you might never understand what you're doing or why you're doing it. It requires making peace with the possibility that your success might cost you relationships you thought would last forever. Kenneth lost friends during his transition. Real friends, people he'd known for decades, people he thought would support him no matter what. They didn't. They drifted away, uncomfortable with his struggle, unwilling to watch him pursue something they didn't believe in. And that loss hurt. It still hurts. But Kenneth made a choice that everyone facing significant change has to make. He decided that living his potential was worth more than maintaining relationships with people who wanted him to stay limited. This isn't about arrogance. It isn't about thinking you're better than everyone else. It's about recognizing that different people have different destinations. And sometimes, the people you're traveling with can't go where you're going, not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling. And you have to be strong enough to continue your journey even when you're traveling alone. The path to extraordinary achievement is lonely, not occasionally lonely, consistently lonely. Because doing what others won't do means separating yourself from others. It means working when they're resting. It means sacrificing when they're indulging. It means persisting when they're quitting. And all of that creates distance. That distance is the price. And it's not negotiable. Right now, at this very moment, there's a decision waiting for you. Not tomorrow. Not next week when things settle down. Not next month when you finish that project. Not next year when conditions are better. Right now, and the choice you make in the next 24 hours will determine whether this becomes another moment you look back on with regret or the turning point you'll reference for the rest of your life. Everything we've discussed comes down to this. Action, not understanding, not agreement, not inspiration. Action, because the world doesn't reward people who know what to do. It rewards people who do what they know. And there's a chasm between those two positions that most people never cross. Think about Robert Hastings in that warehouse. He didn't wait until he had a degree. He didn't wait until someone gave him permission. He didn't wait until conditions were perfect. He saw what needed to be done, and he started doing it that same night. No committee, no approval, no guarantee, just action. Think about Angela Moretti sitting at her kitchen table at 6:30 in the morning, tears on her face, dialing strangers who would reject her. She didn't wait until she felt confident. She didn't wait until cold calling felt comfortable. She didn't wait until she had a better strategy. She made the calls anyway, 50 of them. Every single morning. Think about Kenneth Oay walking away from 16 years of security with no clients, no guarantees, and everyone he loved telling him he was making a catastrophic mistake. He didn't wait until the risk was smaller. He didn't wait until people supported him. He didn't wait until he had it all figured out. He stepped into the unknown because staying in the known was killing something inside him. These aren't special people. They're not gifted with unusual talent or extraordinary circumstances. They're ordinary human beings who made an uncommon choice. They chose action over comfort. They chose discipline over convenience. They chose isolation over acceptance. And that choice, repeated consistently over time, produced results that look miraculous to people who never made that same choice. Here's what I need you to absorb. Waiting for the perfect moment guarantees you'll never begin. There is no perfect moment. There's no day when all your doubts disappear, all your fears evaporate, and all your obstacles remove themselves. That day doesn't exist. What exists is today, imperfect, complicated, messy today. And today is offering you the same opportunity it offers everyone, the chance to do something different. Most people are waiting for permission. They're waiting for someone to tell them they're ready, they're capable, they're worthy of success. But nobody's coming. There's no authority figure who's going to appear and validate your dreams. There's no panel of judges evaluating your readiness. There's just you and your decision. Will you act, or will you wait? Will you start, or will you plan? Will you move, or will you hesitate? Hesitation is a slow poison. It doesn't kill you immediately. It just keeps you paralyzed while years accumulate, while your potential remains dormant, while opportunities pass by, while other people, no more talented than you, no more prepared than you, take the chances you're analyzing to death. And then one day you wake up and realize that you spent so much time getting ready that you forgot to actually start. The transformation you want is available. Not theoretically available, actually available, right now, today. But it requires you to do something you've been avoiding. It requires you to have that conversation you've been postponing. It requires you to start that project you've been thinking about. It requires you to change that habit you've been tolerating. It requires you to take that risk you've been calculating. What would happen if you stopped waiting? What would happen if you took everything you've learned, everything you know, everything you've been preparing for, and you just started? Not perfectly, not with complete certainty, just started. What would your life look like 6 months from now if you made that decision today? I'll tell you what would happen. At first, nothing would seem different. The first day of discipline doesn't produce visible results. The first week of new habits doesn't transform your circumstances. The first month of uncomfortable action doesn't generate the outcomes you're hoping for. And that's where most people quit. They start, they don't see immediate results, and they convince themselves it's not working. But something is happening beneath the surface. Compound interest isn't just a financial principle, it's a life principle. Small actions, repeated consistently, accumulate into massive results, not linearly, exponentially. The first 90 days feel like nothing's changing. The next 90 days show small improvements. But somewhere between month 6 and month 18, something remarkable happens. All that accumulated effort reaches critical mass, and your life transforms so rapidly that people who haven't seen you in a while don't recognize you anymore. That transformation belongs to you. It's sitting there waiting. But you have to go get it. Nobody's going to deliver it to your door. Nobody's going to make it convenient for you. Nobody's going to remove the obstacles and make the path comfortable. Success doesn't work that way. Success hides behind difficulty. It conceals itself behind discipline. It waits on the other side of everything you don't want to do. So here's my challenge to you. What's the one thing you've been avoiding? What's the action you know you need to take but you've been postponing because it's uncomfortable, scary, or just plain hard? That's your starting point. Not 10 things, one thing, and not eventually, tomorrow morning. Before you check your phone, before you scroll through social media, before you distract yourself with 1,000 insignificant tasks, do that one thing, take that one action, have that one conversation, make that one decision, and then do it again the next day, and the day after that. Because success isn't complicated, it's simple. Brutally, uncomfortably simple. Do what others won't do, go where others won't go, sacrifice what others won't sacrifice, persist when others quit. And do it not once, not when you feel like it, but every single day, regardless of circumstances, regardless of feelings, regardless of whether anyone's watching or applauding. The people who succeed aren't different from you. They just made a different choice. They chose action when you chose comfort. They chose discipline when you chose convenience. They chose persistence when you chose retreat. And those choices, accumulated over months and years, created a gap so wide that it looks like they have something you don't have. But they don't. They just did something you haven't done. You haven't done it yet. But you can. You can start today. You can make the decision right now that separates your future from your past. You can step into the discomfort, embrace the discipline, and become the person capable of achieving what you've been dreaming about. The question isn't whether you can. The question is whether you will. Will you do what others won't? Will you pay the price they're not willing to pay? Will you stand alone if that's what it requires? Your answer to that question determines everything. And you don't answer with words. You answer with action. Starting tomorrow morning. Starting with that one thing you've been avoiding. Success is simple. Do what others won't.